The internet is cracked, the show that asks the question, can we coexist with our creation?
Hello, my name is Seth Camillo.
And I am Caroline Risberg, and we are The Internet is Cracked by Addicts for Addicts.
And today we are so very lucky to have Dr. Sinnreich with us. And Dr. Aram Sinnreich is a polymath whose works bridges media, technology, and culture, exploring how the internet reshapes creativity, identity, and society. He is a professor, nonfiction and fiction author, and an accomplished musician, bringing a rare range of perspectives to his research and writing. To see the full scope of his work, visit Sinnreich.com. And you really are, I have to say, you do everything.
Yes.
You right?
I do
You
I do
do
a couple
everything.
things well, and then I do a lot of things not at all. Like, for instance, like ask me to like throw a football, I could not get it like across the room.
Okay.
So, well, thank you for being here. And let's go for the first question. And as you are a musician and you have written extensively about how digital network reshape creativity, do you think AI represents the beginning of something artistically entirely new?
Wow, way to come out of the gate with the big questions. No
Yes.
softballs for me. Well, I've been in the business of prognosticating long enough to know that nobody knows what the future holds in store.
Mhm.
Um, I'm going to say yes with a big asterisk, and the big asterisk is this: right now, AI, and I assume you're talking about generative AI and the kind of suite of services that surround it. Gen AI is neither economically nor ecologically sustainable. It uses a tremendous amount of power. It uses up a tremendous amount of water, and it's tremendously expensive and doesn't have a business model yet. So I'm not certain that Gen AI, as we now think of it, will even exist in 5 years. But assuming that it is a stable technology and that it emerges into some set of tools that becomes widely accessible over the long term, then yes, I think it's going to have significant effects on musical culture.
I mean, there is a band called the Velvet Sundown. I mean, even listen to me. I'm already falling in, right? They're not a band.
Yeah, yeah.
They're
Yeah.
I don't know what you call them. Are they a fake band? Is there creativity involved? I don't know.
I
But
don't
they
know.
are a band that is created by AI prompts, and they have, I don't know, 1 million followers or something like that. I mean, so are we going to change as consumers of culture? Do you think that's what AI's impact is gonna be, or is it the creation of culture?
Both. That's a great question. So, first of all, what we think of as art, or even what we think of as music, is not one thing. It's a big bundle of different stuff that ranges from going to a club and dancing to a bunch of live musicians, to watching a toothpaste commercial and hearing some feel-good music in the background, to being at a stadium and everybody singing together as their favorite athlete, scores the winning goal, right? Those are, or going to a church and singing
Right.
liturgical songs, right? So we, for various historical reasons, we call all those things the same thing. We call them all music, but they're really very, very, very different aspects of the human experience. So I think some of those different aspects are going to be affected by AI in different ways. So if we're talking about like toothpaste commercials, I am certain that human beings are not going to be composing the feel good music for those commercials 5 years from now because and I have a lot of friends who work in Hollywood and write soundtrack music for a living, and it sucks for them. It's gonna put a lot of those people out of work.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
uh, but the flip side of that is I think that it will have the kind of boomerang effect of really valorizing human labor and human creativity. And I think that's something that we've taken for granted for a long time now, in large part because of our economic system, which, as you say, is very consumerist and very exploitational. And also because the technological system that delivers music to us which is very impersonal.
Yeah.
Even when you go to a club these days, you're more likely to hear a DJ spinning than you are to hear a live band. And, the DJ is an extra intermediary between the people who are making the sound waves and the people who are listening to it. And then if you think about Spotify, it's this huge clearinghouse for libraries of recorded sound, which renders it unimportant to the end user whether the sounds were created by an AI or by a human being.
Yeah.
And everybody knows that
Mm.
Spotify has been sneaking all of this less than authentic music into its
Yeah.
playlists to try to cut down its cost of doing business. AI, e.g., not paying human creators to the degree that they require. So I think we've already created a system where certain uses of music may as well be AI generated, and I think AI is going to take off there. I think there are other scenarios, like I mentioned, live music events, where seeing human beings creating sound from instruments on a stage is going to take on an extra special valence that it hasn't had in the
Yeah.
past because it's going to
Yeah.
contrast with that. And then there's the middle path, which is every time a new technology comes around, a whole generation of artists engages with it,
Yeah.
creatively and dialectically,
That's
and
true.
comes up with new ways to fuck with it and create stuff that we haven't seen or heard before. And I am absolutely certain that we're going to see creative artists using generative AI in ways that none of us could predict, but that all of us are going to be like, of course, why didn't I think of that? That's amazing.
I mean, I make little for advertisements, for instance, for this show, I use AI and I make little AI videos. And I feel like I'm being creative, whereas a lot of people would say I am not being creative. That I'm simply, utilizing a technology and it's, how do you think, can you think of any way in which AI could be used in a creative way that we might all agree is creative?
Well, we don't all agree that anything is creative. I mean, there's like a lot of Taylor Swift haters out there, right? So I think 100% agreement is an unreasonable goal, but will there be AI assisted music that many people think is creative? The answer is absolutely yes.
I mean, I believe that uh, live music is going to be more, like as you said. And I actually also think both for musicals and theater and all of that is going to get a new shape and form. I do. I do.
Yeah, I totally agree. And my co-author on my last book is a good friend of mine named Jesse Gilbert, and his day job is he produces this software that interprets sound as visual information and
Mm.
allows you to kind of improvise through that interpretation in real time. So it's not just like a one-to-one like input output relationship. So he's basically created this whole career where he is like the ghost in the machine, adding the human element to an automated process. And I look at artists like that as an indication of what can be done with generative AI. Um, you know, so like there's a common trope that AI is actually like 10 exploited workers in a trench coat, and that's that's absolutely still the case here in 2025, right? A lot of the work being done on the back end is actual human beings either making individual judgments or just kind of tending to the algorithm before it kind of does something hideously wrong.
Yeah, well, I mean, electronic
Mm.
music, I think, had some of the same criticisms. You're not really creating anything. Uh, you're just, you know, taking advantage of noises that happen to be. But in my opinion, I there's a lot of electronic music that I think is real, deep, thoughtful, and meaningful, and
Oh yeah.
it's not it in and maybe that will be the way it goes with AI as well,
I
perhaps.
I would be shocked if it weren't, right? I mean, that's what we do as human beings, is we figure out how to break stuff and we figure out how to make breaking stuff into an art form. And then that becomes a stylized thing and then it gets stale and then we break that.
Yeah.
Right. But do you think a lot of works gonna, you said about you have friends who composing or I mean, I have friends who are copywriters and all this kind of thing, and they start seeing. I mean, obviously, you can see like how AI can easily do commercial. I just saw this music video with a new AI artist, and I couldn't find the name. Full on dancing, singing, doing all this. Like, oh wow! And this is not even a person, not a dancer, not a
Yeah, I mean, the labor issues are totally separate from the
right.
creative issues, right?
Talk about that.
Um,
Yeah.
well, so we have creative industries right now that employ millions of people whose job it is to write advertising copy or write jingles or make illustrations or create like the press releases or whatever. And um, the irony is that those are highly exploitative labor relations already, right? I mean, that's like, look at the SAG-AFTRA strike that happened
Mm-hmm.
last year in Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
And I remember marching on the picket lines with my scriptwriter friends 20 years ago during the last big strike. So this way predates AI, and artists like Spotify demonetized like roughly 85% of the artists on the service last year. Not be Me too. Like I maybe have like 3 tracks that get enough spins to get monetized now. You have to have over 1,000 spins a
Uh-huh.
year per track. So that kind of exploitation has nothing to do with AI. It has to do with the current state of industrial labor relations. So, I mean, there's a sad irony in this, which is that AI is on the one hand uh, going to further the exploitative relationships by putting a lot of people who are holding on by their fingernails out of work. But on the other hand, it might drive things to a crisis point where creators actually reevaluate what their role is in the economy and in society, and begin to organize and stand up for themselves and to create parallel economies that are less exploitative. That's what I'm hoping.
The fact that the Spotify guy is going from exploiting musicians to now it wants to be a drone weapons designer, this billionaire. I mean,
Daniel Eck.
I think that says
Yeah.
everything about Spotify you need to know.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
none of the people running these companies have a shred of empathy because they're incompatible. You can either be good at running a tech company or you can be good at feeling other people's pain. You can't do both.
I said that's a good point.
That's a very good point, yeah.
I mean, years ago, I had this movie and distribution, and I thought this was 10 years up now. And then when I'm looking, and I was like, I'm gonna get it back, or we're gonna do renegotiate, or whatever we're gonna do. And then there was this little clause. I could not find it. I still looking, but it is in there. It is basically it called for 10 years ago internet something. No one really knew all about, but that means pretty much streaming. So they can keep going and have the streaming and for however the new contract is. I'm like, what? So in this, I've when you brought up with SAG and AFTRA, and I know from Directors Guild and all those different things, we don't really know what's going to happen. So how do you predict? We don't know. AI may change new rules tomorrow, and so when you sign in contracts,
Yeah. Well, part of the
what do you
problem,
do? Yeah.
we haven't really talked about this yet, but part of the problem is that our legal system is struggling to keep up with the pace of technological change.
Yes.
Right.
So I mean, the Copyright Office, the U.S. Copyright Office, actually late last year came out with a pretty good overview of what it thought Congress should do. For instance, making sure that certain kinds of machine learning are fair use, otherwise you lock up culture too much, but also making sure that the outputs of these systems are non-copyrightable so that they can't effectively displace labor because
Yeah,
there's not enough
yeah.
economic value in it.
Mm,
And I kind of in broad brushstrokes, I liked where the Copyright Office was going, but then like the crypto king got reelected, and now like all of that's off the table, and it's
Yeah.
all like, guns blazing to funnel as much money into the AI industry as possible.
right.
Now, what do you think about, I mean, there are a myriad of lawsuits, obviously, trying to basically figure out Well, I've used fair use for 3 films, for 3 documentaries, so I believe in fair use, and am I've said this before, and I've sort of not into trouble, but people don't necessarily agree with me, but I don't mind, uh, AI training on what I've created, as long as it is not then, sort of giving chunks of what I've made out, as long as it's like a human being learning,
I
I
said the
don't
same. I had
mind.
the same argument with my literary agent like 2 days ago. She
Yeah,
was
Yeah.
very much on the, like, "We need to get paid for training." I was like, "How much money do you think we're gonna get?"
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
let's
Yeah.
say that they train on 100 billion works. Let's say that there's, like, a billion of us creators getting compensated. Like, that's still, like, an infinitesimal amount of the total pie that we're like, am I gonna, like, kill fair use in order to get, like, 30 cents a year from my residuals
Right.
from having been trained these systems? Like, it makes no sense economically or, creatively, because I
well,
use fair use in all my work or much of my work as well.
but what you said about
Right.
it not being copyrightable when it's, the output, that is actually kind of a genius idea. That's a really great idea.
I wish I could take credit for it. I agree, and it makes a lot of sense. Actually, we don't even need to change copyright law at this point to interpret it that way, because the letter of the law says that it must be an original work by a person.
Yeah, yeah.
And so unless we accord AI's personhood, there's no legal path to creating copyright for AI outputs.
Do you think that AI is, eroding well, it is eroding I question everything I see now, every single video I see. Do you think it's ultimately gonna be a trust eroder, or do you think that there might be a way that AI is useful in speaking truth?
Ooh, that's another great question. I think that right now it's a trust eroder. I mean,
Mm.
look at the whole thing about like the crowds in the Will Smith tour.
Yep.
Everyone was
Yes,
saying,
yes.
right?
Yeah.
And it turns out like those were real people. They were just AI altered images for a variety of stupid reasons, some of which had to do with Will Smith's team and some of which didn't. But because people brought their preconceptions to who this guy was and what he stood for, they were willing to take the kind of distortions in the imagery as proof positive that he was inventing
Yeah.
fake crowds. I think we're seeing that across every field. We're seeing that in politics. We're seeing that in arts. We're seeing that in news. We're seeing that in science and scholarship and education. And I mean, trying to be a teacher and a scholar in the midst of this is terrible because
Yes.
I have to now
Yeah.
presumptively distrust my own students, and I hate that.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know, so I find myself scrambling to like, okay, what would be like not impossible, but like a pain in the ass to do with ChatGPT? Okay, how about like you interview someone and then you write up your reflections of that interview and provide the interview footage? That's the kind of assignments that I'm actually offering these days.
Mm.
So whether in the long term it could flip the other way and become an agent of increased trust,
Yeah.
I'm not going to rule it out, but I think it would have to be, in order to get there, there would have to be an unusual level of coordination between the private sector, the regulatory sphere, and the technology sector to create a system that everybody agreed was some form of consensus over what's trustworthy and what isn't. And before you go
Mm.
and say blockchain, I'm going to say it's not the blockchain.
Okay. We've talked a lot about the blockchain.
Oh,
Yeah.
We've definitely done our blockchain time, but it's not the block. Yes, everything's the blockchain to certain people. Everything is solved by the blockchain. You got to
To a man with a
use
hammer,
the
everything looks like a
blockchain.
nail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if the internet was built on the ideals of openness and freedom, some people have said that it turned the system into a a system of control. What role do you think AI play in that whole transformation?
Carolyn, you're coming with the great questions. Um, That one is a little bit of a softball because I think the answer is in the question, right? I think the number one use case for AI right now is mass surveillance, which is
Mm,
the dominant form of control in a large distributed global society. Um, you know, what really one of the things that really worries me is when you think back to like the first fascist era in the mid 20th century. um, the only limit on total state power was the amount of um, human labor it took to surveil people, to document their crimes against the state and to keep track of them as they went about their business. You could have one person following one other person down the block. But now you can, I mean,
yeah.
take all the data that Doge sucked out of the federal government here in the US and feed that into Grok and say, all right, well, I want to arrest Seth tomorrow. Give me a dossier about all of the worst things that he's done. And it can generate that, in a couple of seconds using
Oi.
your financial history, using your medical history, using your criminal history if you have one. Did you get busted for smoking weed in the park when you were a teenager? Well, guess what? Right. And they're actually using that now to generate these, in the context of ICE sweeps of
Yeah.
immigrants in the
Yeah.
US. So I think, broadly speaking, stronger technologies of surveillance contribute to stronger regimes of control, and
Mm,
among all other things, AI is a surveillance tool.
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I remember like just from I don't like, for example, doing the face. What do you call it when you open your phone with your face? I don't do it. I still do code, and I used to say like, no, I'm not going to do it. But then, if you're traveling and or whatever it is, they're like look in the camera and then click click, and I was like, oh my god, I am so in the system. So what you were saying
Yeah.
with Doge, did they? I mean, we all are in there, right? So they can pick.
A thousand times over. I mean, the way that the in the US and I know this is true in the EU as well, the way that federal data used to work is that it was very siloed. So your tax data would live with the IRS, and your
Mm,
student loan data would live with the Department of Education, and so on and so forth. And they couldn't. It was considered to be unconstitutional to combine those data because it would represent such an overwhelming imbalance of power between the government and the citizenry. And one of the number
mm,
one things that Doge did, besides firing all these people and various other things, was to collect and combine all of those different data sets, which are now, I don't know who has access to them, but I do know that whoever does has have access. The kinds of tools offered by Gen AI give them a degree of surveillance power that humanity has never had before.
No, that's
that's
scary.
terrifying. That's very scary.
No.
I mean, I know like on certain streets they have. I mean, this may be something different, but they have all the cameras around, and they can pick. So if I'm walking there and let's say I look suspicious, they can obviously say everything about me, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's fortunately we're not in like the total awareness state yet because these are still crappy systems that have a lot of flaws, and they're run by people who don't necessarily know what they're doing or people who don't necessarily believe in what they're doing and might sabotage or limit the power of the technology from the inside. We've seen that many, many times. Um, but what they do is they now, I think we've passed the point where they offer a sufficient enough rationale for a bad faith actor, like say ICE,
Mm,
to kidnap somebody, whether or not it's constitutional, whether or not it's supported by the available data. It's a
mm,
kind of like, you know, the political equivalent of better to ask forgiveness than permission,
Yeah.
except that they don't ask forgiveness.
That no, no, they don't. That is terrible,
no.
terrifying. Can you think of a bill or laws or anything? Do you think there's any way to put the brakes on this kind of thing, or are we just this is life?
No, there are definitely ways to put the brakes on it. There are so many ways to put the brakes on it, and some of them are. through policy. Others are through tech or through culture or through business, or through, civil disobedience. But but yeah, there have been so many efforts. For instance, in the US, like in the EU, there are a bunch of laws like the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, and the AI Act that have some power to limit how much data, what kinds of data get collected, how and where and for how long they get stored, how they get used, whether they can be transacted, et cetera, et cetera. We've got nothing in the US at the federal level. There are a bunch of states that have data protection laws, and they don't always mesh with each other. So if you have like a big company based in Silicon Valley that's like serving, you know, 90% of Americans plus another 2 billion people around the world, it's very difficult for them to know which set of rules they're supposed to follow. So they kind of just fudge it and don't really follow any of them well enough. And then that's led to a whole
Interesting.
bunch of um, civil suits in different states.
No.
I'm actually involved. I can't tell you any details, but I'm involved as an expert witness in one such civil suit right now in one state of the U.S.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
huh.
yeah.
That's interesting.
But it would be great if Congress could get their act together and just say this is a thing that matters. Like, let's pass a law.
Yeah.
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 So it should be under federal. I mean, that's weird too. Like that every state or some states have different rules when it comes to that. As you said, that. So what do we do? Congress comes together and
I mean, the problem there is just like we need the federal government to actually be functional, which right
yeah,
now, for reasons, it's not.
Well, you're sort of
yeah.
talking about the social harms, and you as a writer, a fiction writer, what do you think of, like Isaac Asimov and people who have, War of the Worlds, things that do you
Mm.
think that writing about the future of technology is useful and helpful to the next generation of people?
Great question.
Mhm.
I absolutely do. I mean, long before I got into being a tech researcher or a sci-fi writer, I was an avid sci-fi fan, and so much of the way that I interpreted the growth of the internet in the 1990s and up through the Web 2.0 era was really based on a lot of the sci-fi that I'd read as a teenager or in my college years. You think about like, I mean, the term cyberspace was, invented by William Gibson in his sci-fi novel Neuromancer, or the metaverse was invented by William Gibson in Snow Crash.
Do you think that, I mean, when the internet first, was available to the public, not, it was around before that, but when it sort of became in the mid 90s, there was sort of a democratization that occurred, right? And do you think that that has been undone by AI and the current state of affairs, the current way that the internet is run by these multi billionaires, maybe soon to be trillionaires,
Mm.
and
Bite your tongue.
sorry, it,
No,
it
you're right, but
it could happen.
Yeah.
They say Bill Gates might actually be a trillionaire, given, and he's hiding his money in the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. But in any
I mean,
case,
Vladimir Putin might be a trillionaire. We
yes,
don't know what his
we
Yeah,
finances
don't.
are.
But
Yeah.
in this world of what do you think? Do you think we've undermined it, the democratizing power of the internet, or do you think it's still there?
Both. I think I mean, again, like I'm learning from much smarter people than me, but if you look at researchers who have traced the origins of the internet, I'm thinking of someone like Fred Turner over at Stanford is amazing. Um, it always had both of those elements in it, right? So the original ARPANET, which was the network that the internet was built from, that was developed in 1969, came out of the Advanced Research Projects arm of the United States government and was created for defense purposes, right? So it was a war technology, or at the very least, a defense technology from the very beginning, and only really starting in like the 80s with the rise of like BBS culture did this notion of kind of democratized access and a horizontal network of equal peers begin to be the dominant way that we understood its role in society. Um, that being said, I think in large part because of the ridiculous financial incentives of speculative bubbles, of which we've had several by this point, starting with the dot-com bubble in the mid-90s,
Ugh.
inaugurated by the, Netscape IPO. Um, I think I think there's been so much money put into it that in order to create ROI, it has to be it's had to be structurally undemocratized. And more of the internet, to use your words, has ceased to be open and has become kind of proprietary corporate black boxes that you're allowed to kind of put inputs into and get outputs from, but you're not allowed to tinker with or even see what goes on inside of it.
A lot of the streamers they're gonna get rid of, Sesame Street, South Park in
Oh,
Europe,
yes.
doing all this stuff, and you say, "Why would they wanna get rid of stuff?" Well, it's because they don't have to pay residuals,
Right.
and also they remove an asset from the books, and so there's tax benefits. So stuff is really disappearing
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And,
forever.
well, there's no such thing as forever.
Okay.
I
No.
mean, we don't know. And that was part of the premise of my last book, The Secret Life of Data, is that, there's no way to predict where data goes and what happens to it once it's been collected. And that includes Sesame Street and South Park. And, look at all of the kind of, for lack of a better term, like citizen archiving work that's been done using platforms like BitTorrent, right? Like a lot of BitTorrent, sure, is like people wanting to download the latest Marvel movie, but there's a lot of like just like, video of like a political protest in 2005 or like, you know, someone's interpretation of the Ramayana into Spanish, right? And there's like, it lives on BitTorrent because that's one of the very few places that it can't really be taken down successfully.
That is good. I mean, sometimes I can be Miss Debbie Downer with this. It's like, oh, what's going to happen with the kids? And, they are learning and not having their own thinking. But that actually is very positive to me. It's
I mean,
something good.
we are the internet is cracked, so we
Yeah.
have we have a fun limit for
Yeah,
episode, but that is really actually, and I can see that, like, how much, like,
Mm.
Mazzy Star, or I mean, there's just all this stuff on the internet that I never would have seen, when I was growing up, like, it is pretty cool, when it's not in the hands of authoritarians. It is pretty cool.
correct. Yeah, and that's a huge like asterisk, right? But it is. I mean, my 15-year-old like is way into like 80s post-punk music and knows that stuff better than I did when I was a teenager in the 80s,
Yeah.
because I only had the records I could afford to buy,
Yeah.
Yeah,
you
that's
know.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. My brother was a DJ and it was funny how during that time you're thinking about music, how the I guess record company or whoever, they're sending them certain kind of music. So and I remember I had to always listen and I was like, this is a good song, this is a good song. And then that's where you heard the music when you went to the club.
Oh yeah.
And the DJs was there. And now they don't even know how to, not to be like that, but a lot of DJs don't really know how to DJ anymore. They're just putting in the music and then you have the whole library. It's
Press
different.
That's all true. But
press
some of
play.
my favorite DJs are not DJs. There's this guy, Jazz Cat. I think his real name is Maximilian Conti, Italian dude, I think. He
Mhm.
makes like my favorite mixes in the world. I follow him on Mixcloud. And I
Okay.
don't know if he can spin a record to save his life, but his musical knowledge and taste and his abilities of selection and arrangement, like I always end up Shazamming like at least twice every time I listen to one of his mixes. I'm like, I got to know what this is,
That's
What's
and I've
his
learned
name
about so
again?
much great music from him. He goes by the name Jazz Cat
Jazz Cat.
on
Okay,
Mixcloud. Yeah,
I'm gonna look it
but I
up.
think it's Massimilio Conti. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Well, on maybe one final question for you. If you have to imagine the next cultural revolution, right? And we've got AI, we've got the internet involved, and we've got robotics. Let's not forget that as well. What do you see? What do you see the revolution being? What does it look like?
Are you
Mm.
talking about a technological revolution in terms of like a phase shift of what the technology is, or are you
No,
talking about a political revolution or social
political,
revolution?
so political and social revolution. How are these things going to play into? Because I believe we're going to fight back.
I agree with you. I mean,
Yeah.
if human history demonstrates anything, it's that. I think that global industrial capitalism is so severely broken, and the public awareness of that has reached such high points of saturation that I think that's part of why we're seeing the growth of authoritarianism around the world, is because the capacity for insurrection and political instability is so high in reaction to, the global inequities. I mean, like a handful of people controlling half of the world's wealth is like when there are
Yeah.
billions of people starving is insane, and it's sick. It's morally revolting. And I
Yeah.
think most people feel that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think, a generation from now, the map of the world is going to look very different. I think, the political, more or less, the détente that we've known since World War II is, with the important exception of a lot of decolonization in the 1950s and 60s, that map is going to really disappear. I think we'll probably see big land grabs from the US, uh, from China, probably from Russia, reconstituting some version of the Soviet Union, China taking over a lot of smaller Southeast Asian countries and especially like island countries. And obviously the US is trying its best. I don't know if you read this story about like how in Denmark, they've they've got evidence that the U.S. has been sowing like secessionist propaganda in
I have
Greenland.
not read that. I have not read that.
Yeah, it broke
I
this
saw
week. I think it was
something. Yeah. I saw
yeah, it was like a
something.
big story, but there's a gazillion big stories every day. But
Yeah.
so I think the world's leaders know this. I think the world's corporate leaders know this. And what we're going to see in the coming decades is a massive consolidation of political and economic power versus a massive um, bottom up anti-capitalist movement. And I think it's going
Yeah.
to be really ugly. I'm not looking forward to it. I'm not like, yay,
Yeah.
revolution, because
Yeah.
people die in revolutions,
Yeah. Yeah.
often professors and artists.
Yes.
Oh
Yes.
So
God, should be on the shopping list. It's gonna be us.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Luke said something like that too. He said the 30-year war,
yeah.
back in the days of
Yeah.
that's maybe where we're heading.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Or the Crusades. I mean, there are
The
these moments in
Crusades, yeah, like
time.
all this. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, we look, the future's unwritten. Like somebody could develop a new economic system or a new technology or a new ideology tomorrow that might change the way that we all think about it. And that disaster could be forestalled. We don't know. I mean, humanity never ceases to surprise and to innovate. So I'm not building a bunker. I'm just trying to live a good life and be kind.
Oh, well, that's
Yeah.
wonderful. That's
Yeah, I
really
like that.
wonderful. Yeah.
No, but yeah. I mean that's that yes, I agree on that. Well, I'm not going to build a bunker either, but I try to just be a good person and just keep and and I think it's important that we have these discussions like what we
Yeah.
have.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys inviting me to chat with you.
Absolutely. It's been wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
so much. I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
really
And
appreciate you.
maybe we'll check back in and hopefully we won't be doing it in flak jackets and helmets. Well,
Yeah, I'm into that. Well,
all
be well, and thanks again. It's a pleasure to meet
You
both of you.
too. You too.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for watching or listening to The Internet is Crack. Tune in next week when we have another great conversation about robotics, AI, and the internet. You can watch us or listen to us on YouTube or Spotify or many other outlets. And don't forget to follow us on social media. See you next Monday.